Welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, where hunters new and old come to learn and find inspiration from stories of hunts gone by. Everyone is welcome to enjoy the outdoor way of life, and there is no better time to start than right now. So let's head into the great outdoors with your host, Dylan Ray.
All right, guys, and welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast. I'm with one of my good friends and hunting pals, Mr. Gabe Ledbetter. Gabe, how are you, man?
Doing good, man. Glad to be here.
We are in the middle of our first winter storm, I guess. 26 degrees here in Kansas. We're sitting by a fire, enjoying a cup of coffee, and talking hunting. So there's not much better. We're going to both head out to the tree stand this afternoon.
Absolutely.
But before we dive in and talk, man, tell me a little bit about yourself. You're with Kill and Eat TV. You run an outfit there in Pierce City, Missouri. What's the name of that?
Yeah, Hill Creek Outfitters in Pierce City, Missouri. Like you said, me and my brother run that together. Have an awesome time doing it, man. We do everything from whitetails to turkey hunts in the spring, and we have an awesome time doing it. It's our passion, and we love to do it.
And it is a sportsman's paradise. The lodge is what, 12,000 square foot?
12,000 square feet, man. It's got all the amenities a hunter could ever want. I mean, you've been there, spent some time with us. I mean, we love to sit around a fire and drink coffee, but we also enjoy the lodge because it's there. And hey, sometimes you can go camping in a tent, or you can enjoy a lodge. Either way.
Yeah.
So we take the opportunity when it's there, and we use the lodge quite a bit.
Which we've done both out there at Hill Creek.
Absolutely.
We got our wives out camping once, and
that was a disaster.
we got our wives and kids out camping with us in a tent, and both of our youngest were under 2 at the time, so they were both sleeping in packing place. And we get out there and we get set in the tent.
Let me stop you right there. We have to be the only 2 guys that would drag our toddlers into a tent
when it was 40 degrees.
What were we thinking?
They loved it, though.
It was fun, but dude, you talk about, oh my word, it couldn't have got any worse. Go ahead.
They loved it, though.
It was a good time. We made memories, I'll say that.
And so about 1 a.m., it came the worst thunderstorm I've ever been in a tent. And for a moment, we got worried, man. We were checking radars, and we thought the creek was going to rise too high and take us away. And
it got so bad at one point I woke up and the tent was on my face. And I was like, this cannot be good. I literally thought it was the end.
But the 2 youngest never batted an eye. They slept through it like babies.
You know, these women these days, they use those sound machines. And I think that's why our kids stayed asleep.
Nature's sound machines.
They're used to the sound machines, and then we're out there, and it just got crazy and started storming. It's like they thought it was just a normal night,
and they loved it.
But I thought it was the end, man. I was like, Lord, come get me.
It was a lot of fun. Before we dive in, I do got to give a quick shout out to some of my friends over at Three Rivers Archery. They are your one-stop shop for anything traditional. They've got same-day shipping. They've got some of the best experts. So if you've got any questions on traditional archery, give those guys a call. I just recently set up my new Bear Grizzly and had some questions on arrow setup, and I called customer service, just a general number, and told them what I was shooting, and within minutes they had me set up with the right arrows I needed. So fantastic customer service. Same day shipping. I had my arrows in like two days, I think. And so those guys over at Three Rivers do it, and they do it well. Now, what we want to talk about today is hunting in weather like we're facing right now.
Yeah.
So we're both about to head out. What are some things to remember when weather gets nasty? We're looking at pre-rut right now. We're not in the rut yet. If this was the rut, it'd be a different ball game. We would not be sitting here talking. We would be out in a tree stand. So what are some things to remember when a snowstorm hits, when weather gets nasty? What are some things to remember?
I would say this is, don't ever think that there's no way you should be out there, because you should. I mean, the weather can be so bad. I mean, you've been there, I've been there. I've literally been walking into the stand before and had my eyelids freeze over. I mean, it's been that bad. And you think to yourself for a split second, you're like, you are crazy. But guess what? Crazy people kill big deer. And so I would say, don't ever think you should stay home and sit in front of the fireplace with a cup of coffee, because the guy that's not doing what you're doing is going to be the one that bags the big buck.
Yeah. And that's so let's look at it right now with it not being the rut. Will this kick deer up on their feet? Will this kick deer into that chasing mode? I mean, because we are close enough to the rut that it's not far fetched for a deer to be chasing at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So will this kick deer up on their feet and get them chasing?
I would say absolutely. I mean, here we are before Halloween, and we're already having a winter storm. And, deer have already shed their summer coats. We've had a few cold days, and then here we are, we've got a winter storm. So why should we not think that they're going to do what they do in the winter, and that's go to a food source, something like that. So I think we absolutely have a good chance tonight of seeing a big mature buck on their feet. Absolutely.
Now, with weather kicking off like this, I wouldn't have, without weather like this, I plan on hunting a lot of this week. But with weather like this, will you start grunting, rattling, anything like that, or will you still hold off on that?
I would, man. And, deer, just because we know it's not right in the middle of the rut, deer are still vocal.
Yeah.
And when the rut's approaching, so why wouldn't we be a little bit vocal? We should definitely not. I'm not going to go out there and do some big, minute and a half rattling sequence tonight, but I am going to, I'm going to do some talking.
Right.
If there's some deer in the area, I was like, hey, I'm here, guys. Just let them know. Just be a little bit vocal.
Yeah.
But I think it's just right around the corner with things kicking in like this weather working for us. Why not go a little bit the extra mile, and just throw it out there?
Yeah, and T-Bone from Bone Collector, I like his mentality that deer, and you just said it, they're vocal all year.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I don't call outside of the rut, but deer are vocal all year long. So don't be afraid to think, well, if I carry in, a doe bleed, or if I take my grunt in, I'm going to blow myself out of the water and there won't be no deer coming, because deer are still vocal, especially in a time like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to get them up off their feet. They're going to start moving. They're going to start getting into the swing of the rut a little quicker, I feel like, because usually, at least the last, however many years here in Kansas, we haven't had good winters. They've been warm winters. I hunted in the rut last year and it was like 60 degrees one day in the middle of the rut. So I do think this will get them up on their feet quicker, get them up on their feet faster, get them moving a little bit. Do your tactics change when weather gets nasty?
I'd say I double down for sure more on the food side of things.
Yeah.
Because, you got a big deer and it's storming, you're sitting there freezing. Deer are going through the same thing. They're gonna start looking for a protein source. So absolutely, before I'm gonna go sit in the woods in a good rut spot, I'm gonna go sit on the edge of a field close to feed.
Yeah.
So if you got standing beans or some kind of protein source like that, I'm definitely gonna be there.
I'm fired up, man, because I went to one of my best leases, where my target buck for the year is at, and they've got winter wheat up. And so I'm pretty pumped about that.
Yeah.
Because last year the place was bare all winter. They didn't plant anything for the winter, and so, but this year they've got winter wheat up, so I'm pretty pumped about that. So
sure.
Absolutely, I'll be moving. From the woods where I would be hunting over a trail in the rut. I'm gonna go sit in a stand.
Well, yeah, and I'll say on that too. If you got something green, some kind of food plot. In your case, you got winter wheat. A lot of times, in my experience, you'll see them deer, especially when you got a skiff of snow across the ground. They'll go straight to stuff like that because it's easy for them to dig up. Anywhere they paw at the ground, they're going to expose something green.
Right.
So I'd say right there, man, you ought to be good tonight, in good shape.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. Now, I did have a question for you about staying warm. That becomes your biggest issue. When it's 26 degrees, wind chill of 20, snowing, it's still currently snowing. We're going to get wet. We're going to be cold. And I know you're big on ground blinds.
Absolutely.
When's the last time you hunted in a tree stand?
I'll be honest. I was talking to a guy about this the other day. I got to adding up, and I think it's 4 years now. And it's not because I just don't want to sit in a tree. There's a lot of parts of me that misses being up in a tree because there's advantages to that too. But it's just that I've kind of changed my tactics. My strategy is really completely different now than it used to be. So that's one reason that I hunt in a blind. But I'll be honest with you, tonight I'm going to be in a blind, and I may or may not have a buddy heater in there with me. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I wish I could have a buddy heater, but the way I'm set up at the spot I'm going to go tonight, just not possible.
Yeah.
I'll have deer within 15 yards of me, so
yeah,
just not a good idea.
No, and it helps. If you guys, if you don't have, I would say bundling up, do what you got to do, man. You got to be out there. That much. So put the layers on. You know what you got to do, and do it. But if you have a spot set up with a blind, that's one reason that I do that now, is because it's a game changer. Because no matter how bad it gets out there, I can be in there in a climate controlled environment, and I can set more hours.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to tell you, they're used to. I would set right through that stuff when I didn't have the places with a blind, and I would still do that today if I didn't have it. So get out there either way. Do what you got to do.
Absolutely. So Bear has just released their 2021 lineup. Now, before we start talking about what we're going to shoot for 2021, I have to remind you to go get entered to win the giveaway that we're putting on right now. There will be a link in the description of this episode. Head over and get entered. Subscribe to the podcast to be entered. But we're giving away a 2021 Redemption EKO. We're giving away a Radial Nano from Oz by Scentlock. We're giving away a gift card to Minus 33. We're giving away an Alps Outdoors pack and an elite membership to Onyx. So go get entered to win that giveaway, a huge giveaway. And you'll get to have that brand new 2021 Redemption EKO, which is what I'll be shooting. I'm excited to hear what Gabe will be shooting. But before we jump into that, saying Minus 33 reminded me, have a good base layer for tonight.
Yeah,
A good base layer is worth its weight.
Minus 33 on right now.
A good base layer is worth its weight in gold. And if you've listened to this podcast at all, I'm a huge believer in Minus 33. When I first ordered mine, Gabe saw it. He ordered his. Minus 33 makes some fantastic merino. So put on your heavyweight merinos and head out. What that does for a night like tonight, if you get wet, merino wool, it holds warmth even when it's wet. So if you get snowed on and it gets through your outer layer and it gets to your base layers, Minus 33, not just Minus 33, all merino wool will hold its heat retention even when it's wet. So base layers are a must, especially in weather like tonight. So that would be my biggest tip for hunting in the cold, is a good set of base layers.
And I've heard merino wool is the only fabric that actually insulate even when it's wet.
Yeah.
So all around, it's just the way to go.
And one more tip I want to give you for hunting cold, nasty weather is your boots. A lot of people want to put on 5 pairs of socks and throw their boots on. And what you do is when your feet are so cramped in there, you think they're going to be warmer, but they don't get any circulation to your feet. So your feet will get colder. You got to have the blood flow through your feet. So I like a good pair of pack boots. So I'm going to put on my pack boots and have a good, really thick merino wool sock on. And when I get to my stand, I'll actually unlace the boots. That way that I can have the insulation from the boots and the sock, but my blood flow can get to my feet and keep them warm. So that's a good tip, is don't cram your feet too tight with socks and your boots, because then they won't get any circulation and they'll get colder faster. Now, the 2021 lineup. What are you going to be shooting from Bear this year?
Well, you already threw the word out there, Redemption, man. Redemption EKO, I've been drooling over that thing. I really think they did something special with that. So I'm going to be shooting that bow, and I'm pretty sure, I've always been a fan of the Whisker Biscuit, and our friend David Blanton, I listened to that podcast a long time ago, and he's just a huge fan of it,
Yeah.
And he thinks, there's nothing that can go wrong with it. And I got to thinking about that, and I'd shot one for years and kind of got away from it. I went in with the fall away rest and that whole air. And, he said that stuff. It got me thinking. I'm like, you know what? That's right. As bow hunters, we have so many things that can go wrong anyway. So why do we want to add some more variables in there? Yeah. So I think with the new Whisker Biscuit they got, man, they took a legendary product, Trophy Ridge, and it's legendary. It truly is. We've heard about Whisker Biscuits for years, and made it better. So, man, I think I'm going to throw that on there with the React Trio sights. I'm a huge fan of those. That's what I took to Colorado this year, elk hunting, and absolutely loved every aspect of that. So I think that's what that setup's going to look like.
Now, I don't know if you listen. I don't know if you listened to. Maybe it's been 2 episodes ago. I made the statement that I was going to go back to a Whisker Biscuit for many of the same reasons. This year, and it didn't have anything to do with the rest that was on the bow. Mm-hmm. It had to do with the nature of a drop away.
Yeah.
I had a drop away failure twice this year that caused me to have to completely retune my bow. And so I just threw my hands up and said, "That's it. I'm going to a whisker biscuit."
They're so tunable, man.
Yeah.
It's just so simple. You can't go wrong there.
And the new president, or the new president of Bear, John Lene, was on the last episode, and he preached to me about whisker biscuits, and I just decided, man, that's the way I'm going. That's what I'm going to do, and you're not changing my mind. The React Trio for me as well. Hitman stabilizers are legit.
Yeah.
And the Hexlite quiver, that's what my setup's going to be. It's going to be the Redemption EKO. The new olive color from Bear is just gorgeous.
Sure.
So that's what'll be on my bow. And I'm excited this year for the lineup for more reasons than just the Redemption. They came out with the Bear Legit. And that's what I'm going to buy my wife this year. I haven't got her a new bow in a long time. Of course, she went through a spell of spitting out kids and didn't get to go hunting. So, but now our kids are finally to the age where we can drop them off at Grandma and Grandpa's and she can hunt too. So, I'm going to buy her the Legit, which is just for anybody beginning or starting out in archery. That's a fantastic bow, especially for kids because it can grow with them, which is why I'm buying my wife that, because then when my wife is ready to upgrade again, I can move her into something else and I can adjust that down and give it to one of my kids. So the Legit is just an awesome bow.
That's a true investment right there.
Right.
A bow that keeps on giving.
Yeah. Every one of my kids can shoot it. My wife can shoot it for a couple years. I can upgrade her. Then my oldest can have it for a couple years, pass it down.
That's what I love about Bear Archery right there, man, is it takes care of you no matter what need you're trying to fill right there. I mean, you can take care of all the needs.
Absolutely.
From your wife to your kids.
The reason I'm so excited about the Redemption is because the Status was a fantastic bow. I loved the Status. And I fell in love with the different let-offs I could put on that bow. Mm-hmm. So they've done the same thing with the Redemption EKO cam. Are you shooting the Status?
Yeah, that's what I'm shooting right
now. Your brother's shooting the Divergent, and he's not even shooting the Divergent EKO. He's shooting the original Divergent.
He loves that thing.
He's fallen in love with it. And it's so funny because your brother is, what, 6'5"?
He's a big boy.
6'5", 300?
Probably, yeah, somewhere in there.
300-pound guy, and he's shooting a little 28-inch bow. It looks like a toy in his hands. And when he told me he's going with that bow, I'm like, man, are you sure? Because he's got like a 30-inch draw length, and I'm like, that's going to be a pretty steep string angle.
Yeah.
But he went with it, man, and he will not get rid of it.
His peep sight's up by his can.
But he will not get rid of it, man, because he loves it.
He loves that.
It's a great bow.
Yeah.
And the Divergent EKO is staying. So that's a good deal because the Divergent has been a phenomenal bow, and now you throw the EKO cam on it where you can adjust that from 75, 85, 90% let off. I mean, just
such a cool design.
Cool design bow. I'm fired up about some of the new things that Bear has coming out this year, but that is what I will be shooting is the Redemption EKO. Now, I did want to ask you about your preparation for the rut. What do you do? We're coming up. I mean, it'll be here in, a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, and we'll be in the heart of it. Mm-hmm. So what do you do in preparation for the rut?
Well, I always try to be careful about, just kind of the calm before the storm. Patience is a virtue in this time right now because it's so easy. We love to hunt. You love to hunt. I love to hunt. And we want to be out there hunting. But the storm is coming, and the storm being the rut. You got to be careful about just hunting all your places and just because you just don't want to wear them out. You know what I'm saying? And so in preparation, I would say just know it's coming. It's gonna be there. Just be patient and make the most out of those sets. And don't just go in there and waste every spot you got. Especially don't go in there when the wind's not right. Just go in there when it's perfect and you need to be in there. But just wait it out because the storm's on its way, We all,
and I think you talked about this last time you were on the show. We all know to hunt the wind, but there's not many guys that I believe have more patience with hunting the wind than you.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, which is why your spots are so phenomenal to hunt. Thanks for the invite tonight, by the way. I appreciate it. Which is why your spots are so phenomenal to hunt, because there's been times where it's the middle of the rut, we have a snowstorm come in, temperatures dropping, and everybody's in the woods but Gabe because he don't have a good wind to hunt. And I appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
And there's a reason you kill big deer consistently because you don't blow it on going to sit when you've got a bad wind. So I appreciate that, and I wish I was a little more patient like that. Now you can. That's one thing about a ground blind. Going back to that, that's one thing you can get away with a little more is having a you don't want to hunt with a terrible wind, but if the wind's not perfect, you can get away with that because you're enclosed in a blind. And especially if you run some kind of ozone generator in your blind or something, be careful about that because I got super sick last week, dude, running an ozone generator in my blind.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't run it. I guess I didn't have enough of a crosswind to blow it out of the blind, which is good. That means my scent was holding in the blind too. But ran the ozone generator and got a terrible headache. Started feeling nauseous. Had to turn it off. But that's a good thing too. I texted one of my buddies and he said, "Well, that's a good thing because your scent is in there too. It's not going anywhere either." So, so you can get away with it a little more with the ground blind. What are some of the other reasons you prefer a ground blind? I know we kind of skipped over that, and you mentioned it's been 4 years, and I like a tree stand sometimes too.
Yeah.
But you really are one of the guys that got me in a ground blind.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I have a spot this year that's set up with a tree stand. I will maybe moving into rifle season so I can get up and see further and longer. But for at least this bow season, I think every one of my spots is with a ground blind. So what are some of the reasons you prefer a ground blind?
Well, as my kids get older, for one, I'm really looking forward to being able to take them with me because you can get away with a lot more. And for me, that's a huge aspect of it right there, is just to think that, sitting in a tree stand for hours, that being still can fatigue you. I mean, because that's work to just be completely still.
That's why you go on a long car drive and you're so tired when you get there.
Exactly. And you just want to get out and you just want to move a little bit. You got to stretch.
Right.
And that enables you right there to be in a blind. You can move a little bit. And I'm not talking about getting crazy. You still need to be a hunter. But you can set for so much more long periods of time just because you can move around,
right,
and get away
stretch
with
your
a little
legs
more.
out,
Absolutely,
adjust in
man.
your seat. And that's one thing I mentioned. Seat. I'll have a lazy boy in there. I'm just kidding. But really, man, I use it's called like the King Kong or something from Alps Outdoors. Big old chair. I can adjust. I can lay back in a little bit. I have armrests. I mean, it's comfy. I can adjust several different ways.
Yeah.
Keeps me comfortable in there.
For sure.
Rather than sitting on a metal tree stand and my left butt cheek gets numb and I switch to the right butt cheek, it gets numb, so I switch back. That is one of the biggest reasons for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another reason right there is you don't always have to have that perfect tree. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's so many times when I used to hunt, growing up in Kansas, we don't have the most trees.
Right.
There's a reason why it's such a windy state. There's nothing to block it. So, you're always looking for a tree, and you want to be right there, but there's just no tree. Well, guess what? Just throw up a blind in that thicket and brush it in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I there's so many things that it just changes the game on. You can put it in places that you could never hunt before. I mean, people don't realize how you can brush a blind in. I always like to use like the 100-yard rule. If you step back from your setup, if you can get 100 yards from it, and you can look and see what a deer sees coming in, by the time I'm done brushing it a blind, you can't tell it's there from 100 yards.
Yeah.
So everything just looks completely normal versus being up in a tree, when the leaves drop and you have a chance of being skylined a lot of times.
Yeah,
and there's
silhouette you.
Yeah, so it's so many things. Yeah. It's just a game changer.
Now, before we move on, I do want to give, this episode's brought to you by Terrible Coffee. No, I'm just kidding. Man, my coffee pot messed up and I just chug down some sludge, oil, nastiness coffee, but oh well. No, this I do want to give a quick thank you to our friends over at Wise Eye Technology. I know Gabe got some cellular cameras and just a game changer. You don't have to go in, take your scent in there.
Yeah.
And Wise Eye for me is my favorite trail camera I've ever had. I've got a what do you call it? Solar panel. So I never have to go in and change batteries. It sends me the pictures, but also it patterns out the deer, and I can look at a flow chart of when the deer are moving as opposed to weather and moon phases and everything like that. But also it's got game recognition technology, so I don't get hundreds of pictures of possums and coons and rabbits and squirrels and birds. I just get the bucks I want to see. Yeah. And it's even got buck recognition, so it'll send those in different folders, and I can name them, tall boy and it'll put that buck in that folder, and I can look at pictures of him when he's been there. And so
that's incredible.
Wise Eye Technology, make sure and check them out because they have some fantastic cameras. Now, Gabe, send us off, man, with a field note you got for us, something you've learned in the field over the years, something that I can put in my back pocket, and then 5 years down the road, I can pull it out and say, well, Gabe gave me this tip, and he's a big buck killer, so maybe I need to remember that.
Yeah. Hunt the wind. No, I'm just kidding.
That's a cop-out.
No, but that leads me into my next tip, man. And this right here has been something, just kind of brainstorming a little bit one day. I came up with this, and, hunt the wind, absolutely. That's no joke. But it leads me into the next topic. And there's a lot of companies out there that have came up with what we call nose jamming technology. And that's something that's a super concentrated form of something that you apply to yourself that goes out into the wind, and when a deer smells it, it overwhelms their factory glands in their nose and disables their ability to smell you. It's a great concept, but the problem with that is if anything ever goes wrong when you use one of those big old bucks, they seem to relate you to that smell because they do smell it. So the first time they smell it and then something goes wrong, well, guess what? The next time they smell it, it's not good.
Right.
So here's my tip, and I'll leave this with you. We've all used dripping systems, daytime dripping systems that, in the sunlight, it makes them drip. So you can recycle those and put that product, your favorite nose jamming product, into that.
You like that vanilla one, don't you?
I love that, man. The nose jammer. Yeah, that's good stuff right there. So for instance, just nose jammer, recycle that, spray it into that bottle with distilled water. Hang it up in your spot, and that's going to be dripping there all the time, all through
Constantly.
the seasoning. And that conditions those deer to that smell. And it's a good smell. They like it. Wild animals like vanilla. So it's an attractor, plus it's a comforting thing. So they're used to it. And then guess what? When you spray it all over you and you go into that spot,
it still jams their nose.
It still jams their nose, but it does not alert them when they smell it because they smell it every day.
That's good.
So you get to jam their nose, plus you can condition those deer to be comfortable with that smell. So it's a game changer, man.
That's good.
It's a little secret I came up there with. I'm just sharing it to the whole world.
That one's free for you.
There you go.
Now make sure and be careful. How often do you have to go in there to fill that back up throughout the year?
Well, just I don't know. You can see, sometimes it takes them several weeks to completely drip out. But don't forget, you still got to play the wind.
Right.
This stuff it's not a fix-all, it's a preventative. You can hunt the right wind. You go in there, at some point in that hunt, the wind's going to swirl a little bit. So this is a preventative. If it does, you're taking extra precautions to keep the game from detecting you. So just always play the wind. But yeah, put that in there, check it every few weeks, and just, stay out of them places near them. But you talked about the cellular trail cameras, man. On that note, you want to kill bigger deer, put a cell camera in there. It keeps you out of the woods more, keeps your scent out of there, and when you go in there, you're lethal. Nothing knows you're there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is one thing, though. That is the benefit of a tree stand. If you get that wind swirl, chances are, hopefully, maybe the scent goes above them.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a ground blind, you're on your ground level with them, so the scent's blowing right to them. So it is a benefit of a tree stand. Is when that wind does swirl, it can hopefully go over their head rather than into their nostrils.
Yeah, and like thermals in the morning times, we know that most of the time thermals rise, in the evenings they fall. So all that stuff, and they add that in there. And eat apples. I did hear that podcast, so that's cracking me up. But I was like, you know what? That's true, dude. 90% of your breath your scent is coming right out of your mouth. Your breath.
Yep.
Eat some apples, man. It's an odor neutralizer.
Yeah, I heard that from. I have to give credit to Mark Kenyon at Wired to Hunt. I heard him say that, and I never thought of it because apples are a natural. Even if it wasn't an odor neutralizer,
deer love
apples.
Exactly.
So no harm, no foul.
Yeah, slice the apple, eat one, then throw the other on the ground.
Yes.
If baiting's legal in your state.
So, man, send us off with a super fun rut story you got for us. We're about to kick off the rut. Get me fired up for it.
Rut story. Oh, man. Man, I've got so many good ones. What would be a good one?
I got a failure for you while you think of that.
Okay.
So if you're going to use a grunt and a rattle bag, make sure and have your bow ready.
For sure.
I was in the middle of a rattle sequence. I guess this was 2 years ago, and my biggest buck to date stepped out at 17 yards, and my rattle bag is still in my hands. So then I have to make sure and get the rattle bag up, and then I have to get my bow off the hook. I was in a tree stand. If I was in a ground blind, this might not happen. I had to get my bow off the hook, and by that time, he'd already skirted on. So if in the rut, dude, that got my blood pumping. The biggest deer I've ever. I'll show you a picture of him when we get done.
There ain't nothing like that in the world, man.
I have a picture of him. While this is happening, my trail camera snaps a picture of him, so I've got a picture of him not letting me shoot him, and that picture haunts me. But anyways, biggest buck I would have ever harvested, and I just wasn't ready. Yeah. So if in the rut you are going to rattle and you are going to grunt, make sure and have your bow easily accessible, because if they respond to it, they're going to respond to it.
So you're saying make sure your bow's not on the ground on the string, like our producer Nate for the Kill and Eat show, man. Had a monster come walking in, and
he posted a picture of a giant. And in the picture of the giant, you can see his barracuda laying on the ground.
Why did it have to happen to Nate? He's like the nicest guy in the world. Seriously. It's like it would happen to him, man.
Hey,
I feel like he's going to kill a monster this year, though.
Dude, when we get off this, I need to show you a picture. He texted me a picture of a trail camera he pulled, and there is a giant, probably 190, on camera. Just a gorgeous deer,
We're pulling for you, Nate.
Trash everywhere. Go get him, Nate.
Man.
Go get him, Nate.
You're going to have your bow in the stand this year.
You will not put your bow down before you climb out. Go get him, Nate. Did you think of a rut story?
Yeah. So, not even close to my biggest deer, but it's just one that always comes back to my mind. I love decoying. You know, Kansas, it's open country. It's the perfect place to use a decoy because a deer can see it from a long ways away. And then you add the calling in there and a decoy to go with it. It can make for some of the best
funnest hunts,
man.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of my funnest hunts ever, and it's not near my biggest deer, but just a monster. I mean, he was just one of them 280-pound Kansas whitetails that just get your blood pumping. He came in all bristled up. I just got
280-pound fork and horn, dude.
Yeah, it was nice, man. he had a 12-inch spread though, so that's good. No, so I'd grunted and rattled, and I mean it wasn't a minute later, dude. He comes in and he just looks like he's teeter-tottering because his legs are just so stiff. You know how they'll do, they'll bow up. And I had a decoy out, man, and he rolled in. I always face a decoy right at me because then bucks, they'll come in and they'll circle around it to come in from the front side a lot of times. And that's exactly what he did, man. I just drew back and I center punched him. He didn't go 80 yards. And that when I think of the rut, I always think of that hunt because it was just textbook. You know, you got a decoy calling and then a 12-ring shot. It was just a great ending.
Have you ever heard this? I put them quartering to me pretty hard because then when they come face in, that buck's going to be quartering away from me for a perfect shot.
Absolutely.
But have you ever heard this? That running a decoy, I just heard this year and I'm going to try it out. Running a decoy, pop the antler off one side. That way it's a one-horn deer. And then you can, because a buck will always go at the weaker side. If they're going to fight, they're going to go at that weaker side without the antler. So you can determine which way that buck will come in easier. I just heard that this year.
I'll try anything, dude. I mean, hey, it makes sense. I get kind of crazy with it. Even, you know, it being for you guys out there, it's the end of October right now. We know the rut's around the corner. So what I like to do a lot of times, and this is nothing new. I mean, a lot of the legends do this, but you know, if you can carry two decoys, a doe and a buck, this time of year, you can make a buck think, wait, that dude's got a doe already down there. I'm gonna go see what's going on.
You can
see
kick him into that.
You really can. You really
kick him into that territorial fighting instinct.
We could go into a whole other episode on decoys alone.
Yeah,
I mean,
which we will.
Yeah,
which we will later. But well, Gabe, thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We're gonna bundle up and head out to the woods here in just a minute. So I'm excited to go sit and freeze. And even if I call my dad and he said, you know, here in Arkansas, deer don't respond to snow well because they never get it, so they'll just pile up and never get up. But he said I still go out and sit just because I love to watch the snow fall.
For sure.
So if I see a squirrel running through the woods in the snow, it's always worth it to sit in the snow for me. Which I've never. Fun fact, growing up in Arkansas and then only being here in Kansas for 5 years now, I've never got to shoot a buck in the snow. And I want to so bad, man, because I love snow. Snow is like my favorite thing on the planet. And
nothing like a blood trail in the snow.
And I've always wanted to shoot a buck in the snow. So hopefully tonight will be the night. And hopefully I'll be calling you to come help me.
Even Grant
drag
could
out a
find a deer in the snow.
Even Grant that
He's colorblind, man.
and he can't see the color red.
Oh, I'm telling you.
We trailed a deer one time, and I'm like, dude, look at all this blood. He's like, where? I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? There's a gallon spilt out right here.
He would, if he didn't have us, he would probably starve to death. You know, and that would not be good for Grant.
Can't see the color red. Isn't that a bad thing to be a hunter and can't see the color red?
Oh man.
Before we go, I want to give a quick thank you to our friends over at Koa Optics. They make the finest optics on planet Earth. Not too long ago, I guess 3 years ago now, I was in the market for some new optics. I was headed out west and needed a spotting scope. So I called some of my friends over at SNS Archery and just said, what optics do I need? And they sell a plethora of all different kind of optics, and they recommended me to Koa, which is a Japanese company, and they make some of the finest glass ever. And I have never looked back, never picked up another pair of optics. They are just fantastic. So make sure and check out Koa Optics. Guys, thank you for listening. Make sure and go check out the giveaway. Make sure and get subscribed to the podcast so you can win that giveaway. And if you have any of your field notes that you want to share with me, email them over to me at thehunting101podcast@gmail.com. Shoot them over to me. I will check those out, and if I like the tip, then I'll share it from the show, and I'll give you credit for it. So if you have a field note that you would like to share with me and the rest of the listeners, shoot them over to me at thehunting101podcast@gmail.com. If you've got any questions or concerns about the show, shoot them over to me. I'll make sure and respond back just as quick as I can. But guys, thank you for listening. Have a great week, and go enjoy this nasty, snowy weather in a tree stand and get ready for the rut.